Hi, my name is Brittany Rogers, and I'm here to interview Alex Baez. This interview will include sensitive subjects, including but not limited to domestic violence, abuse, and various forms of trauma. Although I am a therapist, a licensed clinical professional counselor, and a certified alcohol and drug counselor, Alex has not, nor will he be my client, and I am here solely in the capacity of an interviewer. And lastly, as a woman, I do want to make it very clear that I take domestic violence very seriously and I support any survivors in their path to finding healing and sharing their stories. A little bit about myself. I am a therapist, a licensed clinical professional counselor, and a certified alcohol and drug counselor. But today I am here solely to help mediate a conversation with Alex about some of his past behaviors, his decisions, and his story.
Hi, my name is Alex Baez. I'm a producer, engineer based out of Chicago. A lot of people know me as Papi Beatz, and I'm here to share my story.
Alex, I know that this was something really important for you that has been on your mind to do for a while. And so we finally were able to collaborate and give you a platform to be able to speak about some of the things that you've experienced. And so I guess my first question for you would be, what is your goal of this interview?
Well, to start it off, my goal is to mainly take accountability for my past behaviors, the way I've treated people, and that includes my intimate relationships, friends and family members. That's pretty much what I'm here for. Is for that. I'd like to apologize to everyone that has been directly or indirectly hurt by my actions.
Okay. Okay. And I think that that's something that we don't get too often from people who have been in your positions. Unfortunately, we end up in situations where there is a situation where you have an abuser and a victim, or what I like to refer to as a survivor. And so most of the time, we get the perspective of the victim slash survivor. We don't really hear from the perpetrator. And I understand how it can be hard to even acknowledge that that was something or a role or a label that you've embodied to a certain degree. What are three feelings if you had to identify about your past behavior?
The first feeling I can think of is being ashamed of all those things that came to light. I'm not proud of any of those, of any of my actions that have hurt anyone.
Take your time.
I regret doing anything that made anyone uncomfortable or put anyone in danger. Mm-hmm. Those are the things I can think of on the top of my head right now of how I felt or how I feel about those things.
Okay. Now I know that your behavior became very public at what maybe you would consider a peak in your career, right? You were doing really well. You were working with various artists. You were well known to a certain degree. And obviously, when things like that go public, you get a lot of backlash. Do you feel like that backlash was deserved?
I just struggled with that. I kind of just felt like everyone was against me, and I didn't have a chance to say anything. But looking, I spent. It's going to be a little over a year and a half now that I've taken a lot of time to look at myself, and even from the outside, like I do think that backlash was deserved for sure. If I was on the outside looking in, and if it was a friend that was in my position, and I wouldn't feel good about that. Mm-hmm. About I would definitely have words to say to that person. So yeah, I think definitely I was kind of out of control really, and that was something that was brought to my attention and to a lot of people's attention. Mm-hmm. And I do believe it was deserved. Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And I think that that is big of you to admit. I think when you are losing opportunities or people that you've spent a lifetime, working towards or curating, creating, and it's gone because something negative that you've been doing in the dark has now come to light, it can be easy to place blame on everybody else but self. And
Right.
so I hope that, in your journey, you've been able to come to understand that at the end of the day, you are the only person who can be accountable for those actions and the repercussions or the consequences of what took place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that you are prepared for potential backlash of this interview?
I do feel prepared for that. I understand that, that people might not, for whatever reasons, just not
Believe.
believe, and so I'm prepared for that. I also, at the same time, I feel like I also hope that there will be people that, either know me or don't know me, that will at least give me that chance to earn back the trust that I've had before, and support me through what I'm going through now. My journey of healing and just self-care. So yeah, I'm prepared for it, and I also hope that I have some people that will stand by me.
So, Alex, I think that when someone is in a situation like you were in, the victim or the survivor may look at you and say, or look at the people around you and also want to hold them accountable for what they feel like may have been enabling your behavior. Do you feel like the close friends that you had in your life who were made aware of everything that transpired, do you think they tried to hold you accountable?
A lot of my friends reached out to me, and they did. They absolutely held me accountable for my actions.
What did some of those conversations look like?
Asking me about, if I believed any of the things that I said and the recording that was put out, letting me know that that's not something that they condone. I had to stop working. A lot of my friends are artists and, musicians. So, that was something that was put to a halt for sure. Just couldn't work. It was something that, some people not even couldn't, they didn't want to, work with me, during that time especially.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that it's difficult to not only lose business relationships, but also people that you consider to be friends. And I mean, rightfully so, right? Like, right. You mentioned the recordings, and I do want to briefly address what I heard in those. And for those of you all who are watching who may not be familiar, we do, what occurred was Alex's one of his previous partners, made a very public post about things that she had endured throughout the duration of their relationship. And she also included two recordings where she was, from what it sounded like, attempted to confront Alex about the abuse or the behaviors. And you kind of make light of it in that recording. Where you were then and where you are today, why do you think that you found humor in something that people take so seriously?
I was in a low point in my life, and I think, to me, I felt like taking that situation lightly was kind of my way of building a wall, kind of being defensive and making sure that, that I just really wasn't in a good place, and I kind of showed that, and me laughing was really just me trying to hide the fact that I did care, because I do. I still do, I wish none of those things happened. And they did, and yeah, it was not funny at all. It definitely isn't.
Yeah, no. I think that was probably what was most off-putting.
Right.
For anybody who listened to it, who knows how serious domestic violence or any sort of abuse is. And for me, even, if I threw on my therapeutic cap when I listened to it, I'm like, is it a nervous laughter? Is it just a lack of accountability of like, I'm going to laugh and kind of make this lighthearted to distance myself from the reality of the fact that I am harming someone who I claim to care about?
It was a way for me to kind of like deflect it, yeah, to kind of like separate myself for sure. Yeah, it's ugly. I don't really know how much to really say that. Besides, it was something that really wasn't how I felt. Taking myself away from the situation, and like it's something that I'm kind of used to as growing up. But I should have known not to react that way. That was not the right reaction, even if I didn't agree with what she said.
So something else that you mentioned in that recording was about you being Puerto Rican, and you tried to kind of relate your behavior or your normalization of you all's relationship dynamics and the abuse to your cultural background in a sense.
Right.
And so I do want to take the time to learn more about how you grew up and how you feel like your culture played a role in maybe the environments you were exposed to.
From my childhood, I kind of generalized that as it being, oh, I'm Puerto Rican, so like we're wild and stuff like that. But I really don't I absolutely don't believe that. I don't think that like that was any excuse or any way for me to be like, well, this is what happens when you date a Puerto Rican, or that was from what I grew up with in my family, and that was just a way for me to another deflection, like a lot of that was me kind of deflecting things and putting blame on other things. But I absolutely don't believe that the reason why I acted out or like lashing out against her or anyone is because I'm Puerto Rican at all.
Did you ever observe or witness women in your family be abused or deal with domestic violence?
My mother and my father there was definitely stuff going on there. I honestly don't remember any of it. My father he passed. He was murdered when I was 8. So, there's not a lot of memories I have growing up. I do have some memories with him growing up, but that was something that I spoke to my mother about during this time that I've stepped away, and she told me that it definitely wasn't they had an abusive relationship.
So how do you believe, growing up as you started to become a teenager or in your early adulthood, where did you learn how relationships functioned?
I've been absorbing it my whole life, and I didn't know this until like I started therapy and started realizing that like I was like basically modeling all of my relationships were modeled after my relationship with my mother. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of verbal abuse. There was definitely a lot of physical abuse. That was normalized. That was something that growing up even into adulthood, I was kind of like, that's how you raise children. Like that's people who don't do that aren't parenting right or something. Like it's something that I felt like I grew up experiencing this, and I thought I was fine. Mm-hmm. I just turned 39, and to be honest, these things coming to light in a way kind of like helped me get out of like a darkness I was really in. Like that situation. My younger brother came over. He's probably like I think he's around like 14 years younger than me. He told me that he was really proud of me for holding all the things that we experienced growing up, holding it in and being a man. And I had to tell him, that was that's completely wrong. That was what prevented me from being a better person and prevented me from being like what, even what we see men as, like but it's something that we also struggle with though. But like I held all that stuff in. I didn't think anything was wrong. Especially, like if anything, I almost believe that all the shit I went through kind of helped me in a way, like I kind of thrived in bad situations because out of nothing and the abuse that I experienced growing up, I made something of myself. So I was like, well, something right happened, but that's not the right way to look at it. But yeah, I grew up like subconsciously modeling that with my, like that relationship with women, even like men too, like kind of like the fighting, but then, like loving someone, caring about someone and brushing things aside, not really talking about it at all, really. Just kind of like, is everything not even saying is everything okay, but like acting like everything's okay. And then, being like, yeah, everything's okay, but that really, it's not.
And, I think something that you mentioned that's important to briefly address is this idea that, people often judge victims or survivors of domestic violence. They look at the relationships and they ask like, well, why didn't you just leave? And people don't have a full understanding of the cycle of abuse and knowing that typically victims try to leave at least 7 times before they successfully exit the relationship. A lot of that is induced in fear. It's hope. It's this never-ending roller coaster of like when things are really good, they're good. And when things are bad, they're terrible.
Right.
And I would hope that people are at least able to see that for the survivor, it's not just as easy as walking away. And I would like to hear you speak to maybe, I don't know if it was controlling tactics or manipulation tactics that you could have used during that time with those partners that convinced them to stay. Sometimes it's like, oh, if you leave me, people may threaten suicide. Like they kind of go to these extreme lengths to get the partner to stay and to feel bad for them and to kind of pull at those heartstrings that prevents them from leaving. Do you believe that that was some behavior that you engaged in?
I never did I never worked on myself. I would make promises, they were empty, for sure. I would like to think that I wasn't as controlling, but I can see how those things can kind of manipulate someone. If he's one minute I'm hurting you, and the next minute I'm crying, and then obviously, yeah, so it's like it that can definitely be. Looking at it now, like and talking about it, I'm like, yeah, for sure, like that's manipulative. And I may not have been like, well, I'm gonna do this to do that, but like at the same time, it's something like where, I would fall for that. If someone hurt me, and
professing my love.
Yeah, so it's like it that can definitely be. Looking at it now, like and talking about it, I'm like, yeah, for sure, like that's manipulative.
Yeah, and most people who end up in being manipulative don't intend for it to be manipulation.
Right.
They feel like, oh, at this point, it feels real to me, or I don't want to lose this person. But I also, again, there's a lack of follow-up, which I think is always a huge indication of where someone stands in how far they're willing to go to prove that they love you and they want to change. And all of these things that we typically hear or see abusers profess when they're the ones trying to save the relationship.
Yeah.
You mentioned knowing that you had anger issues. What have you learned about your triggers through your time in therapy? What do they look like? And how do you emotionally regulate now?
Well, to start learning about these things, like a big part of when I feel like my anxiety like kind of rushing because it just feels like it's like something just.
Are you equating to say that you feel like your anxiety manifests as anger? Because we're talking about the anger. So
Right.
to you, are those feelings go together? Because sometimes that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think I've struggled with that a lot too, like with anxiety. But then it's sometimes where it's right there, and then it's like anything could trigger me. You know, like a lot of things could. So to regulate that, one thing that's been really helpful for me is like controlled breathing. I do meditate a lot more often now. I'm not like every single day, but that's been helping too. Kind of just like resetting myself, like when I start my day. Um, Taking care of myself. I've been working out. I've been eating way better than I have before. A lot of people know me as like someone who puts a lot of junk into their body and stuff, and then a lot of my like 95% of my meals now are I cook them and stuff. Um, so that's like my starting point right now. So there's definitely things I definitely still have to learn about.
So now when you get angry, what do you do?
Now I I think about my reaction to situations. Really, a lot of people that know me know that like that I could be very quick to just speak. And that's sometimes just to be funny but a lot, in those situations, just I'm gonna say the first thing or do the first thing that comes to my head uh, when any sort of conflict arises. To like
playing the tape through of like, if I say this, then what is the consequence or the reaction from the other person going to be? Is it going to be what I want it to be, or is it going to go the complete opposite direction based on how I initially reacted to it?
Yeah.
And you're speaking to like the verbal part of this, but we can't leave out the physicality of the abuse that has taken place. So what parameters or rules or boundaries have you put in place so that you don't get physical with future partners?
I haven't been in a real relationship since then, but I have been involved with some people. And first off, I've been very transparent and told them about like what I've gone through. Really, right now my thing is just not being attracted to things that I used to be, or not being. The problems and toxicity were things that like it was something that like I was definitely
attracted
to. So like
the chaos felt like passion.
Yeah, right. And that I know I need to understand. I don't want to ever hurt anybody again. That's not something that like I see myself doing. I know that it's something I don't want to be a part of. So I'm just gonna continue working on myself and taking care of myself first. Because that's always been the thing. I feel like it's been a problem too, is just projecting.
So do you feel like you were insecure during that point in your life? Well, up until maybe the last year, like you referred to this dark place that you were in. Do you think a lot of your anger was related to insecurities or ego and pride, and you kind of led with that to mask what was within?
100%. I would sometimes, people would ask me about like what I do, musically and stuff, and I would even kind of feel ashamed to say, to be like, oh, I've done this, or I've done that. Definitely insecurity.
As far as not feeling good enough, is that why they were
not feeling good enough? Like I think that's something that I kind of grew up with, was not being good enough, not being, whatever it was enough, like, and that I carry that with me my whole life, even, with everything that I've done. And I'm very proud of all those things. I can speak more confidently about them now than I ever have before. But yeah, definitely insecurity. Like, there's a lot of pressure, not even in my field, but it's just in life, and like
what it means to be a man or how to show up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't have thought I was insecure before, even though I knew it, and you can see it, and like you can hear it in my voice sometimes, or like, like, but I would never have thought that I was.
It takes a certain level of vulnerability to own insecurities and to be vocal or willing to express them, especially in our relationships. Noticing how probably you had a pattern with the type of partners that you chose, partners who probably came from maybe similar backgrounds, as far as like upbringing and what was normalized, the whole like confusing chaos with passion, or the toxic things, meaning that, oh, we really love each other and like we're locked in and all of those sorts of things. And so now you've had to adjust your type, because sometimes our types can be a trigger for the worst parts of ourselves. And that's not to be, to not hold your own self accountable, but to know that, like, I think we all can recognize, yeah, that's the type of person I typically go for. And they also may not be what's good for me too. Yeah. And so knowing that in that relationship, there was a very big age gap. It was about a 15-year age gap. Right. From what I recall, she was maybe fairly young, early 20s or so when you all met. And you had a little bit more life on her. Do you think that how you date now, that where you're trying to go or the person you're trying to be, is it conducive for you to date that young?
No, I don't believe so. My relationships were led by, like sex, really. Like that was something that was pretty much, that's the first thing I would be interested in, and then everything else is a backseat. Like, yeah. So now it's
not leading with sex is something you've learned.
Like I want to. I'm more interested in really those real connections. I definitely think that it was like inappropriate for us in the age gap, to like to and it caused, it definitely was something that brought up issues.
Yeah. And I think that that's something, because obviously the age gap conversation gets had a lot on social media, right? And you have people defending either, everybody's grown, we can do what we want to do. And you have people acknowledging or trying to educate other people on the fact that when there is a difference between 30 to 45 is different than 20 to 35, So understanding the differences of, like, if I want to grow and I want to be different, I also have to look at the type of partners that I'm picking. And age is, of course, not the end all be all, but things get a little bit more murky when we go that far down the age range, So, okay, so I want to end this off with a scenario. You are in a new relationship. How would you know you've changed?
The way I handle conflict, the way like I handle, really like any problems, or my patience and stuff like that. And like I said earlier, I feel like I'm on the right track right now. I feel like I've definitely, like, instead of leaning into the problem and trying to like win, like trying to get the upper hand and disagreements or anything like that, being more understanding.
What people don't realize is, and I want you to just keep this nugget with you, is it's probably going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it is different than what you've experienced up until this part. It's probably going to feel a little boring, a little slow paced, right? Because all of the roller coaster of emotions, or back and forth, break up, get back together, whatever those things that we typically know build up in a dysfunctional or a toxic or abusive relationship, those things won't be there. Like, so you'll have to learn how to gauge the satisfaction of this relationship off of different parameters. You'll probably have to give it a little bit more time before you say, like, am I really interested, or does this just feel different? Is she checking all the boxes for the things that I know I need versus what I'm typically attracted to? And giving yourself an opportunity to build an attraction to these new things versus what, oh, Alex would be enticed by. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's something that people realize when they're trying to change their dating habits or the things that they've experienced, or even again the things that trigger you in a relationship and expose the worst parts of yourself or bring out the worst parts of you, is going to feel completely different, you know? So I'm glad to hear that you are taking your time in that arena, you know, not because I think sometimes we don't get a chance to self-reflect as much as we need to when we jump from relationship to relationship. And then you have to ask yourself when you do that, what am I chasing? What am I avoiding? Am I avoiding parts of myself that I don't want to sit with or I don't want to confront by filling my time with all these other people? All right. So I think this was a constructive conversation. I really hope that your audience gives you room to be apologetic, to be remorseful. What would you say, you know, as we wrap this up, what would you say to the people that you've harmed in the past or people who were affected by your actions?
Taking a look at myself and, I would really want to apologize and really mean that to my people in my intimate relationships that I've hurt. And also to everyone around me that has been affected by this, you know, my collaborators, my friends, my family. I really want to apologize to them and mean it and really show it. I think that's even more important too, you know, to really show that, you know, that these are things that I'm not proud of. And whether I was before or not, or I thought it was cool or whatever, like I don't believe any of that. I don't ever want to have any of these things reoccur in my life. And I'm really sorry. You know, I didn't mean to hurt anyone, but I have, and I apologize for that.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that hopefully the people who deserved that apology, that it could give them some sort of addition to their healing journey or give them some sense of peace. And it may not. And that is the entire reality of what it is that we're doing here, right? Is your profession of your remorse, your regret, your shame. It may not result in acceptance or forgiveness. And I think that's the part that you will have to make peace with, you know, is knowing that some of these relationships are damaged for life. And I know that that can be hard with people you consider yourself really close to. But I do think that there is power in being able to take full accountability for the choices or the actions that you've made in the past. So I hope that that gives you some sort of peace within yourself, or at least some self-forgiveness.
Yeah, thank you.